All right, hello and welcome everyone um, to this wonderful webinar that is being brought to you today by Green Homeowners United. Hello and welcome to everyone who's here to share with us this new report. It's called the Wisconsin 2023 Snapshot of Green and Healthy Residential Construction Careers, Emerging Green Skills and Review of Future Workforce Requirements and Homes. We're very excited to have you all here today. As you've heard, this webinar is being recorded. I'd like to cover some housekeeping with everyone before we begin. We have enabled the closed captioning on this webinar, I believe, and I think it might be under more. So there should be a CC inside of a box, so please feel free to check that for closed captioning. We also have a lot of information to cover today, and in order to share all of this great info, we have taken the liberty of muting all of the attendees, as we have a robust speakers program. We'll also be sharing the link to the report at the end of our webinar. We do value all of your questions, thoughts, and comments. Therefore, we will do our best to answer them in the chat. We believe that many of your questions will be answered once you're able to review the entire report. If after reading the report you have any additional questions that have not been answered, we'd request that you please reach out to Kevin Kane. So that's Kevin at greenhomeownersunited.com. He and/or a member of his team will respond within a week of your inquiry. If you have any technical questions during this webinar, please send them directly to Kevin. And when I say technical, I mean technical tied to the topics we are covering. If you have any technical difficulties with your Zoom, please send them directly to Stephanie Krupsak. She's listed as a co-host. And if you have any topics that you want our panelists to address that you feel are sensitive and you do not want to put into the chat, send them directly to me in a message, and that's Lisa Giesenbauer. Lastly, we'd like to acknowledge that it's a team that's put this event on together. And so I'd like to thank part of the Evolution Marketing team, Stephanie Krupsak and myself, and also the Green Homeowners United team. So thank you to Kevin and Sadie and everyone there. So this is really a joint effort, us all coming together to help share this information. All right, hello. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Giesenbauer, and I will be your event MC today. I also happen to be the president of Evolution Marketing, a sustainability consulting marketing communications firm located in Waukesha County. In 2011, I was appointed to the Waukesha-Ozaukee Washington County Workforce Development Board, better known as the WOW Workforce Development Board, by our Waukesha County Executive and our Board of Supervisors. In 2019, I was elected by our board to the position of Vice Chair. I share this information with you all today to demonstrate how interconnected workforce development issues are with our local units of government, local regional employers, and the nonprofit service providers. So we're all interconnected together is the gist of that. I am very excited about today's webinar and what it brings together. So back in June, Green Homeowners United worked with LAUNA and the Wisconsin Laborers District Council. And together we hosted a conversation across the state of Wisconsin. One might call it a convening. And in that convening, we brought together key stakeholders from across the workforce development, residential construction, laborers, the trades, sustainability, environmental nonprofit, community advocacy, and multiple government spaces to begin to talk about the challenges and opportunities that we have today in Wisconsin tied to the implementation of the Inflation Reduction Act. We held roundtable fact-finding gatherings. We networked with the Laborers District Council. We held roundtable fact-finding gatherings and we networked. Then the Laborers District Council educated attendees about the green healthy home skills that will be needed in order to grow the residential labor workforce to meet the needs of the Inflation Reduction Act and other federal funds. Overall, it was a wonderful day. And that day was the foundation for where we are now. As you can see from the slide, in these pictures, you can see a number of the folks who attended the convening. They hailed from all over southeastern Wisconsin, as well as from the state of Wisconsin. And we were proud to have union members from LAUNA, number 113, International Union of Painters and Allied Trade, District Council 7, IBEW 494, the Sheet Metal Workers, Local 18, and USW Local 202. We also had elected officials and appointed representatives from the state of Wisconsin, Department of Workforce Development, Wisconsin Office of Energy Innovation, and the Dean County Office of Energy and Climate Change, as well as leaders from the National Blue-Green Alliance. In this image, you can see all the different speakers and the organizations they represented. As you can tell, we brought everyone together. We're trying to be inclusive. We're bringing all the different stakeholders together to have these important conversations. Following this convening, Green Homeowners United spent the summer holding informational interviews with key stakeholders from workforce development space, residential construction, labor, trade, environmental, NGO, municipal government, all unpacking opportunities and tactics that can be used to address the key challenges Wisconsin is facing within the green residential construction space, i.e., high turnover, low paying jobs, strong labor force participation rate, which really translates to not enough workers in this space, and then the need for hard and soft specific green healthy skills, to name just a few. To quote one of our June speakers, the convening we hosted was a dream come true. And I'm looking at Richard because it was Richard's quote that said, he said that to me. I too agree. As someone who's been working in the intersectional space of sustainability, green buildings, and public policy for a long time, it's our hope that today's webinar will provide you all with additional insights, and the forthcoming report will help to provide a roadmap for all of us moving forward. It is now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Maria Redmond serves as the director of the Wisconsin Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy, and she has worked for the state of Wisconsin for 22 years. Maria is accountable for planning, administration, and oversight of statewide energy programs and policies. In addition to helping with the development and implementation of the recommendations from the Governor's Task Force on Climate Change, Maria is leading the implementation of the state's first ever clean energy plan. The plan is centered on environmental justice. It creates pathways to multi-sector deep decarbonization and a bustling clean energy economy that supports a diverse workforce and technology innovations. The floor is yours, Maria.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just a pleasure to be here today and to be with you all, and thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us. I'm really here to set the stage, talk very high level about why this work is important. And Kevin and Richard are going to have the details that are going to really enlighten all of us on the workforce opportunities here in the state. So if you want to advance to my next slide, that'd be super helpful. You can skip this one too. So the Office of Sustainability and Clean Energy was created in 2019 by Governor Evers, and he asked this office to really think about the pathway forward to reaching 100% carbon-free electricity consumed in the state by 2050, and to really work through different strategies and how can we get the state through various levels to transition, and really centering our work on justice, equity, and collective action. And with justice, making sure that there's a just and equitable transition, that individuals who've been most impacted by pollution and climate change must be a part of the decision-making process, and this process must include diversity as it relates to race, ethnicity, sex, gender, socioeconomic status, and geography throughout the state. And traditionally, our energy sector has not been like that, and so we wanted to make sure that we transition our energy sector. Also, making sure that job creation and business and community development and resources are shared across the state to as many communities as possible. And communities that, again, have felt the most impacts of climate change and have faced systemic barriers to wealth and opportunity. And everyone should feel it, but we really want to make sure that our communities that have been impacted more are reaping the benefits of this transition. And that really, it is a shared responsibility among all levels of government, governing bodies, utilities, energy, transportation industry, labor, private sector, non-governmental organizations. So it's really a collective body of work. And I really feel that, after talking with the team here, that this work is moving in that right direction of working together to figure out what does workforce look like for the state of Wisconsin. We have 4 pathways as part of the clean energy plan that we published last year in April 2022. And it really creates a blueprint for accelerating clean energy, maximizing and optimizing energy efficiency, modernizing our buildings and industry, and innovating in transportation. But the thing about it is that we have to ensure that the people are there to be able to help us accomplish this work. And so you want to go to the next slide. just a really quick highlight of the strategies in the clean energy plan. I won't read through all of them, but I want to, the objectives and strategies are really focused in on that 100% carbon-free electricity consumed by 2050. But I want to point out a couple of the bullets here that we want to maximize the creation and equitable opportunities for clean energy jobs, economic development, and retention of energy investments here in Wisconsin. We are still very reliant on fossil fuels. We send billions of dollars out of state for our fossil fuel needs, and we really want to keep that money here in the state as much as we can, and have the jobs in the workforce. We're going to miss out on an opportunity for workforce if we really don't focus on that. Also, strengthening our clean energy workforce through training and education. So we can't just expect, the jobs might come, but you have to have that training and education and retraining of workers affected by our transition, so that we can balance things out as we're moving in this transition to clean energy, that we have people ready and excited to be a part of this transition. And that's why this work is so important. I just pulled out a couple of the workforce strategies in the next slide, and really the idea here was to create strategies that could really focus in on what can we do, what are the actionable things that we can do to transition our workforce to clean energy, more energy efficiency jobs. And one of those is launching a clean energy job inventory and outreach program. One of the things that we need to do is we really need to define what is a clean energy job. And you look at different reports coming from the government or from private organizations, and they're really helpful, but they're very different. They'll say we have 75,000, 76,000 energy jobs, which I think is very real. But that's also, construction, energy efficiency. It's a whole gamut of different types of jobs and categories. And then you look at another report and it says we have 6,000 clean energy jobs. And so it's like, okay, we need to kind of figure out, what does this look like for Wisconsin? And I will say that what you're about to hear in the rest of this webinar is really going to set the table and really start defining and moving that forward, and be really helpful to identify where the gaps are and what the needs are. So I'm super excited for the following presentation. The one other thing I want to point out is that, and I'm missing a slide here, and I apologize. In my hurry to get my slides pulled together, I missed a slide. But one of the things that's super important and really ties with this report that you're going to hear about is that a whole home approach is really necessary, and a holistic approach is going to be necessary. Pursuing a healthy whole home approach is actually one of the strategies in maximizing energy efficiency for the state in the Clean Energy Plan. And really, the thought there is to create a collaborative program, leveraging multiple programs to work in conjunction with weatherization, focus on energy program that makes a home weatherization ready and also renewable energy ready and energy efficiency ready. And it's not just about the energy part. It could be about repairs, needed repairs, other healthy home measures like grab bars, carbon monoxide, child-proofing measures, among like roof repair, insulation. All of those things are really going to be necessary in order for us to move and transition. And the fact that we have a considerable amount of funding coming from the federal government to help us with this, it has to be a holistic approach. So I wanted to make sure that I pointed that out, and that really that definition of what is considered a green job, blue job, and what are we talking about here, so that everybody's speaking the same terms, and that we're all moving this forward collectively is really important. So I'll stop there. I honestly don't know if I went over time. My timer went off. So, but I'm excited to be here and excited to kick this off, and just link, the work that you're doing is really, really important for the overall work in the state and to accomplish our transition to a clean energy economy.
Maria, you did an awesome job. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. Remember, attendees, if you have a question for Maria about the Clean Energy Plan or any of the things she's discussed, please put them in the chat. She would be happy to respond to those. It is now my pleasure to introduce Kevin Kane. Kevin is the Chief Economist and co-founder of Green Homeowners United. I've got to update the slide here real quick. Okay, so Kevin works with union leaders, realtors, and homeowners to navigate and understand the benefits of green homes and green mortgages specifically. Kevin calculates the carbon impact, costs, and economic returns of energy efficiency improvements and financial calculations of green lending. He worked for over a decade as a community organizer and a policy advocate. He has helped found cooperative organizations, and is a BPI certified energy assessor. And he also holds a master's in applied economics from Marquette University. Kevin, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you everyone for being here today. So we're going to chance to talk a little bit about the report that we did over since that time that we all gathered, as you can see in that picture. What you're seeing here is a list of many of the different organizations that we formally had the chance to sit down and interview. What do they think the future of residential green and healthy work is going to look like? What do they think it's currently looking like? Where are we behind? Where do we need to improve? This is not even everyone we spoke to. We had some less formal interviews and more discussions with a whole host of other organizations too. But we thank those that are on this list, including one that would prefer not to be named, just to be perfectly open with us about what the state of the situation is here. But we looked at speaking to organizations that either directly contracted, set the terms for contractors, or in otherwise we're paying attention to the future of this residential work. So we thank all of those who were able to join. Next slide, please. So a quick word, excuse me, about what do we mean by green and healthy homes or energy efficient residential jobs. So there are a lot of careers that address both energy efficiency and health issues in homes. We are focusing on the residential jobs that are generally not already part of an existing apprenticeship program specifically for residential, nor do they require a master license to operate. So in general, this report is not focusing on professions like plumbers, electricians, HVAC technicians, operating engineers, many of whom would help work in homes. Instead, we're looking at the kind of work where somebody might install insulation on a Monday, perform an energy assessment on a Tuesday, do lead abatement work for part of the week, drywall, home repair, home inspection, general rehab, asbestos abatement, or possibly even things like roofing, siding, and solar panel installation. These are often jobs that, because they don't always require specialized certification or licensure, people can often switch between during the course of a residential laborer's work scope. So we are referring to these as what the Department of Labor's Davis-Bacon determination refers to as residential laborer. This is who we are talking about when we talk about green and healthy homes jobs here. Next slide, please. So in our interviews with a number of people, we identified a series of challenges that people are concerned about. One of the top ones was the ability to find and retain green and healthy home experts, whether the contractors or the workers themselves are specialists within that field. People were frustrated with both finding and retaining experts in this area, and whether this was a mismatch, a failure in finding experts, or a broader lack of them. We've heard that approximately 50% of contractors that some of these folks talk to aren't licensed, that a lot of this residential landscape is dominated by the small contractors that generally are not large enough to run an operation that can ensure good jobs, benefits, let alone consistent payrolls. Next. And furthermore, there were just, oh, can you go back, please? Thank you. There were just fewer contractors of scale that were large enough to handle this energy efficiency, healthy homework, that were able to do things like training, customer education, prevailing wage and benefits, quality services at a fair price. To do all those things would require a level of scale large enough to spread the cost over multiple teams. However, the average residential contracting firm only has 4 employees, and less than 3% of all residential contracting firms have more than 20 employees. And so as we heard, energy assessors are booked up. Many contractors don't find it profitable to do single-family low-income homes. The residential sector is losing talent to other sectors like commercial. And larger firms who have a bit more scale are turning down work because they may not be able to participate because of shortage of trade-ready workers. Next. Furthermore, we kept hearing stories too about concern about there being a lot of pressure on the contractors. They're not large enough, and they have a series of pressure points on them. They already have to deal with day-to-day issues, cash flow, schedules, workplace challenges, project delays, and any further delays in program enrollment or a rollout or payment or extra requirements just makes this harder. And so we heard from folks saying that the Inflation Reduction Act rebates being pushed back or other delays in programs, it puts a lot of pressure on contractors right now. We've heard that people express concern about the 3-bid method of finding contractors, and for others to say a lowest cost only option is not always a cost-effective one, because you end up sometimes getting firms that don't pay their workers well and have high turnover, or aren't able to handle the administrative complexities of the projects that we need to get done. So in addition to them not being large enough, or sometimes even able to be found, there were stresses on many of them that our interviewees highlighted. Next one, please. So when we asked about the future of this work, our stakeholders, our interviewees explained that the market for green and healthy homes is only going to increase. And we have difficulty right now, excuse me, we have the opportunity right now to get ahead of that demand. Currently, we were told that there's a deficit of ready, geographically dispersed and available energy assessors, insulators, lead abatement experts, and that furthermore, there's other challenges. For example, we heard that less than 20% of people who get a Wisconsin lead abatement license stay in the field, and that upwards of 80% fail their post-lead abatement clearance for not being ready. We've heard that there's no real good training for the type of work that needs to be done in lead sites. We heard a lot in the areas of health and energy. Those were the two major areas in the residential area that had to be addressed. And when we say health, over and over and over, we heard lead abatement as the number one thing that health concern that people wanted to address. Next, please. We didn't lead on this. This is what we heard from those who were involved in this area. Furthermore, when it came to energy, we were hearing that concern about insulation, that it's both racialized, that it tends to be lower income, less likely to be unionized, much higher turnover and lower pay, that it takes a while to have that level of training, and that it was actually not always competition for workers between the industry, but people leaving the industry to things like warehouse work or things that were not related to building work because of concern that this job can be dirtier or more difficult or more cramped environments. But it was super important work. And so there was a concern of making sure that we had trained, ready, well-compensated people to stay in this career. Next. So furthermore, again, we heard over and over that this industry is going to keep growing, this residential work, especially in green and healthy homes, especially thanks to a series of recent legislation, Inflation Reduction Act, ARPA dollars, the bipartisan infrastructure law. There was going to be a sudden drastic increase. There was concern that we'd be able to handle what some thought is a doubling of residential insulation demand in a year, that we need a lot more workers in the residential improvement space, that there's even a growing private sector lead abatement work that there's trying to happen at the same time. And that workforce agencies were saying, well, if you want all of this, we need to know now so we can start training people for it. And so we were hearing excitement, but concern. Next, please. So we also heard a series of proposed solutions, but the thing is, over and over again, 3 job themes came up under this residential green and healthy home area, or even home repair broadly, as an area that could really represent the most promising growth opportunities in this residential job market of these kind of jobs. Insulation and air sealing came up repeatedly. Home repair broadly, but especially with a focus on lead paint abatement. Now that could include you're replacing older windows and you're doing lead safe renovation, but it also could be the specifically funded lead paint abatement programs. And lastly, we also heard a need for home energy assessing and consulting on building performance, that a lot of the money coming under the Inflation Reduction Act requires energy assessors. And there's already a difficulty finding some who are ready to go. And so the recommendations that many that we interviewed and that we are synthesizing here came down to looking at apprenticeships, came down to making sure that there is wages and benefit standards, that there is a career pathway for people to not just be blowing insulation or abating lead paint for the next 20 years, but how do you grow into your work to eventually be program managers or company owners, as well as making sure that project funds are moving. And so we're hearing from a number of folks. These are snapshots of some of the quotes that we have heard, and many, many more will be in the report that we identified. And so I'm going to, I believe, pause on that because I believe the next slide is that's the end. Yep, there it is. So they'll have a little bit more on one of these, but in general, we heard over and over again that this is where those that we interviewed were most concerned about, but saw the most growth opportunity in the state of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Kevin. That was wonderful. I'm still working on learning how to do PowerPoint slides at the same time as doing Zoom. Anyway, so thank you all for your patience. It's my pleasure now to introduce Richard, who is our next speaker. Richard Diaz is the Water Infrastructure Organizer of the Blue-Green Alliance. Richard works with Blue-Green Alliance's legislative, field, and communication staff to engage partners and allies within the Midwest to demonstrate support for advancing an economic recovery focused on manufacturing and infrastructure investments. Richard has extensive community organizing experience across labor, political, issue-based, and neighborhood campaigns. Being from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I just say Milwaukee because, we're Wisconsin. Richard strives to fight for racial and economic justice for Black, Brown, and working class people everywhere. Within his 10 years as a community organizer, Richard has been able to help create Milwaukee Neighborhood Association Amani United, increase member participation, and achieve worker-oriented contracts for members of the Amalgamated Transit Union Local 998, and help thousands of voters register to get out the vote, and also co-found the Coalition on Lead Emergency Coal. His experience in building relationships, increasing civic participation, and advocating efforts amongst marginalized groups has resulted in numerous policy changes, newly elected officials, and partnerships between advocacy-based and service-based nonprofits. Richard is also an AmeriCorps alumni and seeks to organize for change within volunteering and professional capacities. Wow. Welcome, Richard. You're just amazing.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lisa. That was definitely a mouthful. That's an old bio. I need to update that soon. It's been a lot longer than 10 years now. So, I see so many familiar faces in the crowd, happy to be here. I was the participant at the event in June that mentioned that this is a dream come true because, just seeing how hard Kevin has worked, realizing that Green Homeowners United is a union employer and it's just going to pay people more, and their commitment to, working in these tough neighborhoods and recruiting workers from, disadvantaged communities is just, it's such an honor to see them grow and be able to evolve. So happy to be here and touch on a few things. I'm going to kick it back over to you, Lisa, to play our video from our event back in June that highlights some of the work that Green Homeowners United is doing and how we can expect more job creation from the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure law. Go ahead.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to not play the whole video, but I'm going to play 4 minutes of it. Okay. Enjoy.
We were started because I was working at a nonprofit that was very interested in the future of green jobs. And as we were trying to figure out how to put people back to work, bringing together union members, former union members, environmentalists, we realized that one of the biggest opportunities for us was to upgrade old buildings, make them more energy efficient, because they paid for themselves and put people to work. Yet, we also found out that of all the buildings we should be doing, 9 out of 10 buildings in this country are single-family homes, meaning that we needed to figure out not just how to upgrade buildings, but how to help people understand what to do and how to make it affordable. So at Green Homeowners United, we help guide people through the rebates, tax credits, fair financing, grants, whatever's available to help them navigate what makes sense in their house and how to afford it, so that they can do more than they maybe first thought they could, because it not just helps fight climate change, but it saves them money and makes them more comfortable too. One of the things that we really believe in at Green Homeowners United is that the future of upgrading buildings is going to be helped by the Inflation Reduction Act, but it's also in helping to provide fair green financing things, working to convince banks and credit unions to start doing things like green mortgages and other fair upgrades, because these upgrades pay for themselves over time and they just make sense. And so homeowners, regardless of what income they are, should have the means of making it truly affordable.
So I actually have customers that cry when we talk about the opportunities that are available to them through some of the grants and financing options that we have. They need so much help and their homes are in such disrepair that it'll make a big difference in their lives. So, the Inflation Reduction Act is going to be a game changer for a lot of people. Being able to electrify their homes will actually reduce their reliance and reduce their carbon footprint, which is doing right by the planet. But it's also going to be super helpful for them to be able to green their home, pay less money. It'll give them opportunities that they might not have otherwise had financing-wise to be able to make those improvements.
We work predominantly with insulation and weatherization, lowering energy bills, and a little bit of lead abatement.
The difference that we're making at Green Homeowners United is a profound difference. For one thing, we're helping to help the climate. We're affecting the climate. So climate change and things of that sort, every little bit that we can reduce carbon emissions in whatever form is a great benefit to the environment. And community-wise, these are the areas that typically are not addressed. Those questions are not addressed in those communities. So each and every homeowner, each and every house that we do helps sustain the environment that much more.
So we partner with unions like the laborers union to help figure out how do we create good living wage careers in this area. I mean, there are master plumbers, there are master electricians, there really aren't master insulators, which is a problem when you have to pretty much insulate almost every building in this country. We need to make sure that these jobs are not gigs, that people are doing this not just for 1 or 2 years, but for 5, 10, or 20, that they can make a career out of this. And that includes good wages and benefits and retirement.
To me, being in a union is first-time experience. And I had a preconceived idea about a union, but once I actually got into the union, it was just incredible. The benefits that I received, the fellowship, the camaraderie of everyone wanting to do those things good and make an impact, that's really the greatest thing about the unions that I can say.
It helps with my family.
All right, thank you for that, Lisa. Now we'll get into a few slides that I've prepared. As I mentioned, my name is Richard Diaz, the Water Infrastructure Organizer at Blue Green Alliance. Next slide, please. BGA unites labor unions and environmental organizations to solve today's environmental challenges. And we do it in a way that creates and maintains job quality, working to build a stronger and fair economy. We operate under the premise that you don't have to choose between good jobs and a clean environment. We can and we must have both. On the slide here are some of our members, both environmental organizations and labor unions. Next slide, please. So in the building space, we follow our Better Buildings approach, which has 3 principles. 1, a better building is energy efficient, healthy, and climate resilient. 2, a better building is designed with equity and high road labor standards. And 3, a better building utilizes construction materials that are healthy, made in the US, and are low carbon. As we all know, the building sector sits squarely at the intersection of climate change, income inequality, and racial inequity. They are one of the nation's highest carbon emitting sectors and also one of the most visible examples of racial inequity in the nation, because people of color are more likely than our white counterparts to live in low income households and live in high poverty communities. We spend up to 3 times as much on energy bills and are deemed what is called energy burden because, in part, we are more likely to live in older, less efficient housing. And according to the most recent data released by DHS, Black children are 4 times more likely to suffer from childhood lead poisoning. This is true in Wisconsin and it's true across the nation. Unhealthy and inefficient housing has created an inescapable cycle of poverty for too many people. But there is hope. Next slide. The infrastructure bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law, the Inflation Reduction Act, and continued investment from the state of Wisconsin bring the opportunity to support the need to break that cycle. And done right, these investments in better buildings can improve health, drive down emissions, save taxpayers' dollars, improve climate resilience, and drive job quality in the creation of an equitable career pathway. We just released a report that we commissioned from the Political Economy Research Institute on how infrastructure funding from bill the Inflation Reduction Act, and CHIPS Act will create over 3 million jobs per year. And right now, the construction industry is projected to grow by about 4% relative to the 2021 employment level, which means that that's close to 467,000 jobs annually. And the report also flags that women and Black workers are underrepresented in the construction industry. And it will be nearly impossible to meet workforce demands without more inclusive pathways to these careers. As you can see here on the screen, millions of jobs are going to be created. To fill these jobs, we need installation workers, workers to do drywall, finishing, repairing ceilings, floors in both residential and commercial properties. We will need window installers, glazers, heating and air conditioning mechanics. On the screen here, you see the Energy Efficiency Revolving State Loan Fund, which receives, $250 million from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. And, it's just going to create millions of jobs. The State Energy Program, which received $500 million from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, same thing, hundreds of thousands of jobs being created. On bluegreenalliance.org, we have a resource center for Bill and Ira that includes a roadmap to navigate federal funding for public buildings. So that's including schools, hospitals, some universities, as well as municipal buildings. We also have guides that talk about domestic content and labor standards so that you can take advantage of clean energy tax credits. You can also check out our buildingclean.org website, which is a database that contractors and consumers can use to find appliances and other building materials that are made in the US. Next slide, please. And this is why the work at Green Homeowners United is so important and really helps to secure the win of these benefits from the federal, state, and local funding sources within buildings and the residential market at large. In addition to Green Homeowners United being a woman-owned business that seeks to train and employ and retain workers of color, they are directly fighting climate change and protecting kids from childhood lead poisoning as a union shop. Green Homeowners United is such a rare entity and an anomaly in many cases. And here on the screen, you'll see some numbers around jobs that will be created within specific skill trades, which are so crucial to pay attention to when we think of, how do we actually, turn these federal pieces of legislation in Washington into real wins in communities across the state of Wisconsin. Next slide, please. Yeah, so advancing equity, without a qualified workforce, we won't be able to complete the clean energy and infrastructure projects catalyzed by these investments in a timely fashion. At the same time, we're struggling to fight climate change. We're struggling against racial injustice. From its outset, our nation's economy has been built on the exploitation of people of color. For example, historically, Black Americans, far worse in our economy, having lower wages, less savings to fall back on, and significantly higher poverty rates. Regardless of education level, Black workers are far more likely to be unemployed than white workers. In fact, unemployment rates are twice as high for Black workers. And that disparity carries into the workplace as well, with Black workers paid on average 73 cents to the dollar compared to white workers. The wage gap persists regardless of education, and even with advanced degrees, Black workers make far less than white workers at the same level. Through these federal resources, we have an opportunity to shift the tides. An advantage of the jobs created by Bill and IRA are that they are available to workers without a bachelor's degree. And these jobs can be for America's economically hard-hit working class and for women and Black workers who have not had access to these opportunities in the past. This opportunity reinforces the need for continued investment in skilled training programs, including those that are union affiliated, to serve as an on-ramp to these jobs and as a mechanism for boosting economic security and job quality across communities. Next slide, please. And, the skilled trades play a big role in our ability to maximize the investments and to create good quality paying jobs. And federal levers like the Davis-Bacon Act plays a big role in making sure workers are compensated fairly on federally funded projects, especially because in Wisconsin, the state legislature in 2017 and 2019 repealed Wisconsin's prevailing wage laws, thus making prevailing wage applicable only to state agencies who have received federal funding for specific projects. Like projects in the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act. Very grateful for Davis-Bacon. And since Davis-Bacon was created, Congress has passed, hundreds of laws extending prevailing wage requirements to projects that receive various forms of federal assistance in the form of grants, loans, tax credits, and other financing methods. Higher wages on a given project can attract high-road contractors employing skilled professionals who perform high-quality work and help to create long-term economic benefits to a community while creating a long-standing professional workforce for future projects. When I think about the importance of prevailing wage, I think about the direct correlation between the increase in income inequality and the decrease of worker power, as the share of workers in a union fell from 24% in 1979 to under 11% now. When workers take home more money, the economy does better and profits aren't hoarded at the top. Next slide, please. And, research has shown that through the power of unions, workers are able to get more and better benefits, such as health insurance and pensions. Research has also shown that across the board, union members earn higher wages than non-union workers. And this is especially true for workers of color and women. White male union members earn 17% more in wages on average compared to white male non-union workers. Both female and Black union members earn 28% more in wages in comparison to their non-union female and Black worker counterparts. Latinx union members earn 40% more in wages on average compared to non-union Latinx workers. Wow, that is a huge difference in what someone can take home and what they earn from being union versus non-union. And, with the resources available in the Inflation Reduction Act, you won't get the expected energy savings or health benefits without a skilled workforce. Studies have shown that poor installation of HVAC and other energy efficiency measures often result in energy losses of up to 50% compared to projected savings goals. With the Evers administration continually cranking out apprentices year after year, and Wisconsin being the birthplace of the registered apprenticeship program, it is only fitting for continued investment in workforce development and strong labor standards on infrastructure and residential projects. So as we work to implement the federal, state, and local programs that improve our building stock and cut carbon emissions, we have the opportunity to ensure we do so in a way that protects and creates job quality, creating good union jobs, saving kids from childhood lead poisoning, lowering our energy bills, and addressing economic and racial injustice head on, thus creating a cleaner, stronger, and more equitable economy for all. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Richard. Incredibly inspiring. Thank you. I'm going to now bring Kevin back to talk some more about some of the findings now that we've heard the state of what's going on in the world and why these findings are so darn important. Kevin?
All right, thank you. So we, you'll see this more in the report, and thank you, Richard. Richard was able to highlight it briefly. We do have in here both research on what we have found is an estimate of the number of jobs that will be created in this sector, and it is thousands over the next 10 years, about 9,000 over 10 years. in different areas like insulation, lead abatement, window installation, heating upgrades, things like that. So this is timely. And so from all the interviews that we've had with folks and all the recommendations, to be clear, not all of them agreed on everything. People did have differing positions, but a lot of them identified some of the same situations and some of the same problems that they sought solutions to. So first off, based on the interviews, we recommend the creation of a green and healthy home state residential apprenticeship program, focusing on those worker types that we talked about. Similar training program for residential laborers. We also recommend that agencies in multiple programs should look to integrate multiple programs to do more per home, such as energy efficiency, lead abatement, home repair, asthma prevention, etc., because that gives the chance for these residential apprentices to see different opportunities for how to make a home better and to have some efficiencies in that section. Additionally, we recommend taking the steps to ensure that the Inflation Reduction Act rebates or other federal funding sources are moving forward as soon as and effectively as possible. We know that it's better to do it right than fast, but at the same time, we encourage it to be as possible, moving forward as soon as possible. And that programs that have the ability to begin funding residential projects now in fourth quarter 2023 and first quarter 2024, we urge them to do so because it will allow contractors to start hiring and training and preparing. Most residential contractors do not have the ability to hire a bunch of people and wait for this influx of federal dollars. So giving them a chance to do work now. We recommend that programs that have the ability to integrate prevailing wage, aka Davis-Bacon requirements, or track it, or other sort of wage or benefit floor, should do so, such as the City of Milwaukee's ME2 programs looking to do so for their green and healthy homework. We recommend that also, and lastly, we'll spend a little bit more time talking about this. This one may seem a little off topic, but it actually isn't. We recommend that a regional or statewide financing option for green and healthy home improvements be established that works with contractors to evaluate to facilitate education and consumer enrollment, whether that's a green bank, whether that's a revolving loan fund, whether that's an expansion of current programs. We need to make it easier for contractors to help homeowners identify what improvements they need and how to pay for it. Next slide, please. So to just dig into this more for a second, because again, it seems a little distinct. Residential energy efficiency, even with more robust federal dollars coming, if we want to ensure that this kind of work continues in Wisconsin, that's generally going to be more out of pocket than many can afford. So clear, fair financing can support this residential market, can help residents access the full inflation reduction rebates, which can be in the thousands, but only if they continue to go deeper in their home. So a lot of times they're going to have to put up more than maybe they thought to access all this money. Or to spread out the cost of private work like private lead abatement, which oftentimes is over $30,000 a home. So to do that, we need to make it easier for these residents to take advantage of it. But really, contractor third-party lending programs already exist, especially at point-of-sale financing options. But many of these are almost predatory in their design. And we've been seeing, and we ourselves have connected with these financing programs that charge contractors 20% or more of the project cost. It's what's known as a dealer fee, as well as charging consumers relatively high interest rate payments. So this market exists, but it is taking advantage of both. Next slide. So again, models already exist. Wisconsin's Housing and Urban Development, Economic Development Authority, WEDA, has recently launched a Wisconsin home improvement loan program that's statewide. There's about a dozen lenders who do it. I would tell you there's almost no contractors that are aware of this program. I had to spend a lot of time trying to talk to lenders to figure out how this program worked. Wisconsin's exploring a Wisconsin Green Ribbon Commission on Clean Energy and Environmental Innovation, especially looking at the context of a green bank. There are on-bill financing methods. Milwaukee has an ME2 financing program with Summit Credit Union, but only for City of Milwaukee residents. So these programs exist, as well as in other states, but they're not really yet at scale in a major way. The thing I want to leave on this is that contractors are the front lines of going over home improvement options, as well as point-of-sale financing options, so that when homeowners are weighing what incentives that they should take advantage of, they need to know at that moment what financing options are available to them. So as people are designing these programs at the state or local levels, We encourage simple, clear, and not predatory financing options that contractors can explain with low or short-term options, long or short-term options, so that we can facilitate enrollment. We have some financing programs that just will not talk to contractors, but yet they want us to promote their stuff. So being able to design this goes hand in hand with training people, because it'll make it so the projects are frequent and larger, which is important as we grow this market.
Wonderful insights, Kevin. Thank you. I'm going to now talk about the meat of this report, and the recommendations proposed by Green Homeowners United in it have come from, as you've heard, 17 interviews across stakeholders serving Wisconsin homeowners in multifamily buildings who came from across the green building, residential construction, healthy home, municipal government, nonprofit, and workforce development space. I know it's a mouthful, but think about it. Those are all of our partners. So Green Homeowners United has also had countless conversations with folks who were not formally cited in this report, who attended our June 5th event, who didn't attend our June 5th event, and or who are just interested in helping work with us in this space. The bottom line of all of those communications is that we are all concerned about having enough trained workers for the future, and those specific trained workers need to have hard, green, and healthy home skills, as well as soft green and healthy home skills to meet the future workforce demand. So the next slide, I'm going to share with you some of the findings tied to what we're calling hard skills. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. Of course, there's going to be more listed in the report, but I just wanted to take this moment to kind of unpack why this is important. So prior to basically the last couple of years, people would talk about these skills as being hard skills. Well, there's been an advent since 2021, 2022 of what are called green skills. And so today in 2023, many of these skills that are listed here are considered green skills, whereas in the past, these would be skills that folks within the residential construction space would be engaged with. And I think it's important to highlight, and I've literally bolded some of these in here, because changing the language that we're using to talk about these skills is really important, especially when we look to the future workers. And what I mean by that is both younger millennials and folks in the Generation Z. So those are young people that are 25 or 26 and under. They're very interested in working in careers and career pathways that are tied to addressing climate change and the climate emergency. They want to be part of the solution. And it's not just me saying this. I mean, there are thousands of studies I could cite that are saying the same thing. So I think that we, as decision makers and folks who are active in this space, need to remind ourselves that how we talk about and frame out these skills and why these skills are important will be very useful for those future recruitments. Okay, and then I also want to highlight soft skills. So the last key takeaway that we'd like to share is tied to these green and healthy homes soft skills. Now, again, this list is not exhaustive, but it too demonstrates that many employers, and when I say many employers, I mean literally every employer I know across Wisconsin are facing challenges when it comes to soft skill. The problem is that it's not only seen in the green and healthy home space, it's across all sectors, which is yet another reason to include communications, problem solving, customer service, and time management, just to name a few, as types of skills that should be included in any type of future apprenticeship style training program. As part of our next steps, we will continue to work in partnership with all of the key stakeholders who have been involved in these discussions, with the aim of figuring out the best way to help train laborers for these new green and healthy homes careers. Thank you to everyone who's been putting notes in the chat. Please, panelists, feel free to respond to anyone who's there. Kevin has just shared out the report. And I just have a couple more slides. We'd like to thank everyone. And when I say everyone, I not only mean all of the participants who were in our study, but we really wish to offer sincere thanks and appreciation to all the different stakeholders working in and adjacent to the residential green and healthy home space. Members of our team have had incredible conversations with various partners, stakeholders over the last several months, and it's our hope that this report sheds light on those key findings. Thank you to all the attendees from our June 5th convening in DeForest, as well as all the individuals and organizations named and unnamed in this report for sharing your insight and willingness to work together to find solutions to Wisconsin's workforce challenges and climate change. We also want to thank everyone who's picking up a copy of this report. So all of you who are here today watching this webinar, thank you for being with us. Thank you for taking the time to learn about this report. If after reading this report, you feel compelled to join us, please reach out to Kevin, our chief economist. Together, we can all move forward. I'd also like to extend gratitude to our promotional partners who are helping us to promote out this report. So we owe a debt of gratitude to our promotional partners. Those are LEUNA, the Wisconsin Laborers District Council, the Citizens Utility Board of Wisconsin, and Revitalize Milwaukee. We have a lovely quote on this slide from Linnea Katz-Pettit, who is the Executive Director of Revitalize Milwaukee. And I think this quote from Linnea really hits on the head the holistic nature and the complex nature of what we're dealing with, and how we all have to work together across various different sectors and disciplines in order to solve this problem. Hopefully you all have a chance to read that quote. And then thank you from the Green Homeowners United team. We appreciate all of you being here with us today. And again, if you'd like to reach out, if you have questions, please contact Kevin Kane, our Chief Economist. Following the webinar today, we will be sharing this recording as well as a copy of the report with everyone who's there, who has given us their email. Anything else, Kevin, you'd like to add?
I also want to make sure to shout out Forward Together Wisconsin as another important partner, as well as many of the others who couldn't be here today for helping draw attention to this and directly supporting the work of upgrading homes. So with that, we can answer questions that people have. If we want to take it off screen share, Lisa.
Sure. Just give me a moment.
Wonderful. So again, thank you all for coming. We have people on here who are part of utility programs, financing organizations, unions, workforce organizations, advocacy groups. We have a wide list of people on this call. So again, if you have questions, I encourage you to put them in chat. We'll answer a few as long as people have them. There were a few that have already come in, and so we can take a stab at some of them, myself or some of the others on this list. If you have others that you would like to raise, again, we'll try to answer them. But for those of you who can't stick around, thank you again for your being here and helping on this conversation to make homes energy efficient and jobs good. So I see we have a question here from Heather Allen about the barriers for putting together a green and healthy home residential program. What are the next steps to doing this? So Lisa can speak up too on this, but as she already pointed, we've already started a conversation with the Department of Workforce Development coming out of that June 5th event that we did. And we'll be meeting with them in the hopefully not too distant future to continue talking about what that could look like to design a green and healthy home residential focused apprenticeship. We have another question here from Melissa at Elevate, and she appreciates the information and about union and non-union, wondering about wage comparisons within union. Are there gaps between white, Black, Latino members? Are there gaps among men, women, trans folks? Generally, I'm going to have to defer to what other contractors may end up having, but one of the nice things about having a union contract, at least when it comes to us, is that there is a floor that our contract says we cannot go below that. Some firms may go above it. Usually that floor is above what is standard. So for example, our residential energy efficiency contract with the Laborers Union helps set the Federal Department of Labor prevailing wage standard for this kind of work statewide. And so, you know, that helps people regardless of demographics have that guarantee. Going beyond that, though, is something that we need to make sure is as equitable as possible. There's also here a question about efforts to diversify unions and ensure healthy environments for women and people of color. One of the things that we're really proud with working with the laborers on is that in Milwaukee, they are the only minority building trades in the area, and they have a higher level of women participation in the state apprenticeship programs than others. That does not mean that we're reached where we need to be. There's a lot more that needs to be done on that. And so we're excited to work with other organizations, other pre-apprenticeship programs, or as Justin put here, youth apprenticeship programs, to look at getting people into these apprenticeships and eventually full-on skilled green and healthy home work.
Richard, I wasn't sure if you had anything else to add to that, because I know you've been working in this space for a really long time.
Yeah, no, the most simple answer I could share with you, Melissa, is that, the way, for instance, the plumbers talk about lead service line work, the plumbers are one of the more whiter unions out there, with the majority of their workforce retiring pretty soon. But this question has come up a lot, and they're like, all the apprentices, you get paid the same no matter what. As you start to accumulate hours and build seniority in a company, you get paid more. As you start to take on other skill sets and learn other, aspects of a job, you potentially can get paid more that way. The question about diversification in the trades is a huge one that I think nationwide people everywhere are trying to tackle. The bottom line from this webinar is if we create good streams of work for contractors to bid on work and have strong labor standards attached to those projects, we can get more people of color on these jobs. I just want to highlight again what Kevin is doing and what Green Homeowners United is doing. What is it now? You guys are close to 50% of employees of color. Like that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. So it takes to work with contractors that are high road employers and truly see the need, so that we can put entry level people into jobs, get people reskilled who may have some on the job experience but may not have certifications, or folks that are just waiting to accumulate apprenticeship hours. So those are really good questions, and I hope I was able to answer. I can drop my email in the chat if you care to have a longer, more detailed conversation. I know at the national level, some of our Blue Green Alliance Foundation folks from Building Clean have been working with Elevate and NABTU, the North American Building Trades Council, to start some of these talks. So yeah, great question.
They'll also want to make sure to thank who is on this call. As Lisa and Richard already mentioned, Green Homeowners United is a woman-owned firm. I get to be the face of it in many cases, but our president, Sadie Tischer, is here on the call too. She's just not on video at this moment. So thank you, Sadie, and thanks everyone else.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will be sending out the slides with Richard's email address in them too.